Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Jank Tank, episode number 41. My name is Timothy Zaccanino. I'm going to be your Pack 1 Pick 1 today, and joining me, two Windmill Slam picks. We've got Teld returning with us. We chatted about some alchemy last week. We're going to get back to form today. And Chris, unfortunately, couldn't make it again. He described, he messaged me yesterday and described his situation as his computer has imploded and the guts of his computer are laying on the living room floor. So whatever that's supposed to mean, he just doesn't have access to a computer right now. And I think he's getting frustrated trying to put it back together. So instead, we've got a guest coming in with us. Mopbeeble is back, who hasn't been with us since December of like 2023 or something. For those who don't know, Mopbeeble is one of the admin in the Jank Diver Gaming Discord. He's a great voice in the community and kind of an all-around nuisance. So we've got Mop with us today. Mop, Teld, thanks for joining.
Hey. I just wanted to also shout out Mop. We don't give him nearly enough credit. He is the guy that does all of our scheduling and also is our HR manager and pretty much wears a bunch of hats, which worked really well last year when we had detective hats and cowboy hats floating around.
Hey, everyone. I'm back. Surprise, bitches. But, it took me out of the cube for a year plus, but I always make my way back in. So happy to be back.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, once I found out Chris wasn't coming, I was like, hey, Mop. Mop's asked like 4 or 5 times over the last year or so, like, hey, when am I coming back on the podcast? And then I'm like, hey, we've got a spot for you on the podcast. What do you want to talk about? He's like, I don't know. I was like, oh, okay. So, yeah, thanks for joining, Mop. Thanks for filling in last minute. Today, what we're going to be doing is something I'm calling the first 8 picks. We're going to take some draft packs from our mainline Jank Diver Gaming Cube, and we're going to separate the 3 of us and kind of walk through how a draft would look from each of our perspectives. You know, what picks would we take individually from these packs? And, what routes would we go down? Do they completely overlap? Do they diverge from one another? Kind of the show, like, to talk about our cube and, like, the cards that are important right now, maybe the cards that are less important, but also to kind of demonstrate, hopefully, that they're just branching paths throughout a cube that are all equally viable. Maybe we get into a heated debate over something. Maybe not, but the packs we picked out, I think, are pretty good. There should be some good discussion here. But we did this in the Discord as well at one point, where I just basically did the first 8 picks of a draft and kind of posted them side by side for the community members and had them kind of write out what would your first 8 picks be and see where people would be relative to other people. And it's interesting too when there's like 2 people who would diverge from what everybody else would do, and it's like, are they right? Is everybody else right? I don't know, but that's going to be the goal of today's episode. Before we do any of that, I do want to remind everybody that the best way to support Jank Diver Gaming and the Jank Tank podcast is to join our Discord server. Come draft with us and give us your feedback. It's a great place to hang out with like-minded individuals, talk about Cube, Retail Limited, all things Magic. You can find links to our Discord server wherever you're listening to this podcast. We host tons of scheduled drafts throughout the week, including our Peasant Cube on Saturday nights, the mainline Jank Diver Cube, which is the cube we'll be pulling packs from today on Sunday nights. F&M style drafts on Fridays when they fire. On Fridays, our players vote on a cube to play, and we have various guest cubes created by members of our server throughout the week, a lot of which are Mops cubes, actually, as it turns out. It feels like we're always debuting a Mop cube or something like that. But
yeah, eventually I'll make a good one. I don't know when that'll be. I'm still working on it.
Well, I have Dragon Cube is going to be getting some hecka support for this. We'll actually have 2 drops in the cube now.
People really seem to like Holiday Cube for whatever reason. All right, check out our socials on Twitter at Jank Diver Gaming, youtube.com/Jank Diver Gaming, and twitch.tv/TeldTalks. And if it sounds like I'm being a little bit foggy with my voice, I have come down with the sickness once again, so I am doing my best not to like cough in the middle of the episode. But that is our intro stuff. Before we get into the packs here, we decided to let Mop handle our single card discussion for the week, and he tells us that he mysteriously told us that he has a card to talk about, but didn't tell us what it was.
Well, yeah, you put me on the spot like that. I had to think back to my most recent JDG Cube excursion, and the card I wanted to talk about was an oldie but a goodie, Inferno Titan. I don't know if this has come up recently, but so my last draft of the JDG Cube, I of course Persian wasn't there, so I wound up in 4 color, 4 to 5 color nonsense, and I wound up with Inferno Titan as my top end. For those who don't know, Inferno Titan's a 6 mana big red boy, 6/6 that when it comes down deals 3 damage divided anywhere you want, and then it also does that when it attacks. So the Titans are a classic card, and Magic, there's one for each color. I think Inferno Titan's the only one in the cube, right? Oh, yeah. Is it the only Titan in the cube
right now we have Grave Titan benched, I believe, so that should be
okay.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So very strong card individually. And a card I don't think I've ever actually played in like a typical red deck. I feel like it definitely functions more as like a top end in these sort of greedier multicolor decks. But I was looking through the cube because we were talking about before coming on today, like the possibility of like doing a tier list and things like that. And I was looking at like top end cards for each color. And I feel like Inferno Titan, in my experience, has been like remains a really excellent finisher for a lot of decks. I feel like it wheels a lot. I don't think it's a very high pick. 6 mana is a lot of mana. But I was just looking at like cards that like come down and really end a game. And in my experience, Inferno Titans might be like, if not at the top, very close to the top of that list. Like you slam this card and a lot of decks have a very hard time dealing with it. I feel like you guys have gotten away from a lot of like the top end cards that have like, ward, hexproof, things like that. So obviously it still dies to a removal spell, but it's pretty stabilizing. It's just like a big effective play. And I continue to find myself like having it in these like greedier decks as a really good top end, and I continue to be pretty impressed by it. So just wanted to give like a little love to maybe a card that gets overlooked because it's been here a while. It's like a pretty classic card, and like people might not think about it as like a big flashy pick anymore, but I still think I rate it pretty highly.
Yeah, I think I would probably agree. I think Inferno Titan is one of those cards that doesn't really stand out anymore because the Flames of the Firebrand effect doesn't necessarily kill a lot of larger creatures. So, sometimes it's going to come down and it should be bigger than things, but it's not always the biggest creature on the board, and it's not always going to do something with the removal spell. But yeah, most of the time I feel like when this card resolves, it gets you pretty far ahead, and it's a easy to get card if you're in the decks that want it, because the traditional red decks and most of the decks in the cube aren't really interested in casting it. So you're usually in that Jund 4-color or like Gruul space where you're playing it. So it's a relatively easy card to get. I definitely think it's one of those cards that has had some competition in recent sets with cards like Trumpeting Carnosaur and Overlord of the Boiler Villages. Did I get that one right? Yeah. So, there's some options for other cards that are like it, but Inferno Titan is one of those cards that if you're a little behind and your opponent's going wide, or they're playing the blue 2/1 flyers, can really just wreck your opponent's board, assuming it resolves. So yeah, I think this card's kind of what you're looking for 6 mana. It doesn't necessarily just instantly in the game, but it very frequently will put you into a situation where if you were behind, it gets you to parity, and if you were ahead or at parity, it gets you really far ahead and threatens to kill your opponent in 1 or 2 turns.
Yeah, it's the type of card that never really ends up in my decks, but I respect it. I just don't lean in the direction of decks that want to cast Inferno Titan. It kills quickly. I mean, beyond just coming down, clearing out some of the small creatures, it attacks for 9, right? Because you can send all the damage at face. Mop didn't mention it, but it also has Fire Breathing. For red mana, you can give it +1/+0 as well. So it attacks for a ton of damage, closes out the game very, very quickly, and that 3 damage can clear out little blockers too. So it almost always demands either a removal spell or like multiple blockers to get it out of the way, and the damage is usually done by then. It was at its absolute best when we were playing Arena of Glory, I think is what it's called, from MH3, the red land that can kind of give a creature haste for virtually no cost. Grave Titan and Inferno Titan like absolutely popped off with that card, because you just Inferno Titan with haste is sick, right? You get to divide up 6 damage and you get to hit for 6 right away. So we don't play that card anymore because it's a little bit too free. But yeah, I think this is a good shout. Like, this is a card. When were the M11? Is that when the Titans were printed?
I think so. It's M10, M11, something. I think it may have been M10 because they were in standard when I started playing, which would have been, I think, in 2010.
Yeah, you wouldn't think like big 6-drop mythic rare from 2010, 2011 would really hold up these days, but the Titans were just that good. Most of them. We've never really played Frost Titan or Sun Titan in our cube.
Grave Titan's still the actual best thing you could do for 6 mana in Magic the Gathering, at least on the Arena client.
We did play Primeval Titan for a little while, but
Colossal Dreadmaw was not the best.
Yeah, Colossal Dreadmaw with deck thinning. But yeah, good shout. Inferno Titan is still a pretty strong card, it turns out. Not in the Vintage Cube anymore, is it?
No, not currently.
Yeah, I do, we did say it has fire breathing, but it's pretty clear in the art, though. It has fire bearding.
The art is fantastic.
All right, there's my one of many terrible jokes out of the way for the day.
I mean, Inferno Titan has a couple other alternate arts, but the original art is just fantastic. Like superimposing, like dude coming out of a crater full of lava or whatever.
Yeah. Clearly hits the gym.
It's Kev Walker, so there's like no background at all. Kev Walker never illustrates a background in his art. Yeah, very, very cool. I mean, kind of goes for the Titans in general, though. I mean, Primeval Titan's still tearing up Modern. Sun Titan's still relevant in Commander. Frost Titan exists,
Frost Titan's claim to fame is that whenever it's in play, I cast a removal spell on it, and it has the ward that doesn't indicate ward and doesn't give you a notification, and then my removal spell fizzles, and I feel sad every time Frost Titan's in play.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to pop another cough drop here, and we're going to move into our mainline discussion here. So what happened is I went to Draftmancer, I pulled up our cube, our mainline Jank Diver Gaming Cube, and created a pack and drafted with a bunch of bots and took some screenshots of the first 8 drafts, or the first 8 picks of a draft. Do you guys, real quick while I get this cough drop going, do you guys want to talk about why the first 8?
Yeah, because that's the first 8 picks are the ones where there is no wheel. And so this is the initial portion of your draft where you're kind of trying to navigate and get the best, most powerful cards possible before you see kind of what's open and available to give you a full direction.
Yeah, once you get to pick 9, you're starting to look at the wheel, which is cards that have been influenced by what you've actually taken. Technically, you don't really get information, too much information until about pick 9 as well. Plus, we didn't want to do an entire draft for 3 people. So this is basically just to demonstrate, the path the 3 of us would be on if we opened the same packs. I should mention, this will be posted somewhere. I'll have links to these. I'm not exactly sure how to do it yet. Maybe I'll just make, a Google Drive file with all the picks, but I will post a link to the picks wherever you're listening to this if you want to follow along. And if you're going to do that, I actually do suggest just go through the draft real quick yourself, picks 1 through 8, figure out what you would take, and then come back and listen to the rest of the episode and see how it lines up. And obviously, leave some commentary. Let us know what you took versus what we ended up taking. So I guess before we do that, is there these days the Jank Diver Gaming Cube? What's the narrative with the cube these days? What are the things that you want to be doing? What are the things you're looking out for from the very beginning before you open pack 1? What's the community consensus of the best decks versus worst decks? What are you looking for in a pack 1?
Sure. I mean, I think in general it's worth so I'll talk about that in a second. I think also it's worth mentioning what is the strategy with describing these picks as well, because I feel like when we do pack 1 pick 1s on the server, there's a few different ways I could answer the question. There's what do I want to be playing? What am I playing in the context of the people I'm playing against? And also or am I taking something strictly with the idea that I'm trying to win the draft? Sometimes I take things because I want to have fun. I think when I'm drafting with the community, oftentimes I'll be oh, I kind of want to play this deck, or I don't like this deck, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to try to answer these packs in a way that's strictly this is what I would take if I was trying to win the draft, try to win the pod, because I think that's probably the most helpful for people who are listening and trying to come up with the right strategy. In terms of the cube itself, I mean, I don't play it as much as probably Teld does nowadays. I maybe get 1 rep in a month at most. So my understanding historically for the JDG Cube, I've thought of it as a pretty fast cube. I've thought of it as like aggro leaning. I think historically control hasn't been great, but I know over the past year blue has gotten a lot better. I know over the last few months, I think blue green has been like one of the top decks, just sort of like these mid-rangey value decks with a lot of strong top end interaction as well. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think in general, like it's been pretty balanced, and I think you can wind up in any of the five colors at this point and be pretty happy.
Yeah, I think the cube itself, generally, I mean, people still talk about it being one of their favorite cubes they've played, and people enjoy playing it. And I think it's reasonably well balanced, but I do think it is impossible in the current state of the cube to not look at the blue and green, and to another extent, blue green. But really, just blue and green individually are kind of polarizing the cube in a sense, where these green big mana sort of not as much like 7 drops necessarily, but just playing like a few cheap dorks and ramping into a 3-drop on turn 2 or a 4-drop on turn 3 and just getting a huge mana advantage. Those sort of decks are very, very powerful, and the very reactive blue decks that are playing a few of these cheap aggressive creatures like Malcolm or Enduring Curiosity that allow you to leverage when your opponent doesn't do things. I think the blue and green decks are very, very polarizing. I think green beats up on most of the cube on average, but then it has a very, very, very soft blue matchup that we've brought up a lot of times. And I think those are the best things to be doing, but I do think you can win with any color. Like up until recently, we were seeing a lot of black-red doing quite well, and I think there's definitely metas where it's very good. I think there's some very powerful cards in white right now that are definitely power outliers that can do stuff. And so it's a little bit difficult. We're trying to take more data, or at least empirical data, I guess. We're trying to take more of the deck images for decks that do well and don't do well, because the trophy case paints an image of a bunch of blue control decks versus green and mostly Simic piles lately. But I think when you look at the full lists and like the context of things, I think you can kind of play anything and get away with it. You'll just have, if you're playing an aggressive deck, you're going to have a very bad green matchup. If you're playing something that's like a mid-range deck, you're going to have a very, very soft blue matchup on average. So, I think those are the pillars of the format, like the best two things to be doing, with aggro being a little sketchy. But I think overall there are still lanes to do just about anything in the cube overall. But yeah, you do have to from pick one be considering, like, if you're playing green, how you're winning your blue matchup, and if you're playing anything that is not blue, how do you beat green?
And this came up recently. Is there any consideration for trying to be a monocolored deck?
No. I think being a monocolored deck is a bad idea.
I think it always depends on the packs. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out ever. Like, I think there's probably you're more realistically going to wind up in like a mono white, mono red deck, because that's going to have a more focused strategy, but, or mono green, I guess. But yeah, it just all depends on the packs. I wouldn't ever say like, don't do monocolored if you're getting past great cards in one color. You can do it.
Yeah. I guess I was taking it as is there a reason to want to be monocolored? And I think for that, there's not a big incentive. But yeah, obviously, if you get past nothing but white bangers the entire draft, and your deck is just super high quality cards, even though you're playing a color that maybe people see as weaker, you could probably get away with it. But in most of the time, I think, especially if you're not a very, very linear aggressive deck, the ease at which you can pick up a couple of splash lands and replace your 23rd, 22nd playable with something that's a power card in another color is pretty easy.
Yeah, even the quote-unquote monocolored decks usually splash some of the gold cards. But okay, Mop, do you want to go ahead and read off this first pack for us? Sorry, I'm going to put the onus on you guys to read a lot of the cards just to not overdo my voice.
So pack one, going left to right, we see Season of Loss. This is the big black-colored sweeper type effect, followed by Birds of Paradise. Most people probably know that one. Mana Dork. Then we have Phantom Interference. That's the modal counter spell in blue. Spell Snare, another blue counter spell. Scorching Shot, which is a 2-mana red removal spell. We have War Leader's Call, which is a Boros gold card. It's basically for aggro decks. It pumps your board and deals some damage. We have Quirion Beastcaller, 2-mana green beater. We have Thraben Inspector, a good 1-mana white creature. We have Regal Bunnycorn, which is a 2-mana white creature. We have Reprieve, which is the white counter spell in quotations in the cube. We have Slick Sequence, which is an Is It damage spell that draws you a card. Mu Yanling, which is a newer card, I think, to the cube. It's a 4-mana blue card. I can't even read it right now, and I forget what it does, but we can go over that if somebody wants to talk about that card. Kitsa, Otterball Elite, which is a 2-mana blue looter. Enduring Curiosity from Duskmourn, which is a 4-mana creature that also draws you lots of cards potentially. And then we have Bone Splitter finishing out the pack, which is a 1-mana equipment, colorless. You want me to go first?
Yeah, I think we're all going to gravitate towards one card as like maybe the best card in a vacuum, but doesn't necessarily mean it would be our pick. So yeah, Mob, why don't you tell us, like, when you see this pack, what are you thinking?
Right. So I'm looking at the pack. I mean, I think some of the things I'm looking for is like any obvious like power outliers, any like really powerful cards that I just want to slam and sort of stake a claim on. I think we always look at color distribution in a pack. I think it can be overblown, especially like when you're playing in like tight pods like the JDG Cube, where like signaling, people want to send good signals, but in pack one, you really should be just focusing on like the best card, putting yourself in the best position. There's 5 blue cards in the pack, so if I was looking to wheel something, I might want to take a blue card. But on the other hand, if there's 5 blue cards, I might be putting people on my right into blue and putting myself in a tough position. For me, the strongest card, or the card that popped out immediately, was Birds of Paradise. I think we all love birds. I think it puts you in a good position. It fits into pretty much any green deck. We know acceleration is very powerful in most decks. So there's one other green card in the pack besides birds, Quirion Beastcaller, which I think is sort of a middling pick. So it's also not sending any green signals to my right. So I think I would take birds first, and then following that, I mean, it actually, the more I looked at the pack, my second pick got closer and closer to birds. I think on pure power level, my second pick would be Enduring Curiosity, a card that has stock has like continued to rise the more we see it played. I think it's probably the strongest blue card in the pack. We've talked about blue being a powerful color, and I think you're setting yourself up to be in a strong deck. I think it's a strong card. I think it's a very strong first pick. And then third pick after that, probably further down the list, I'd probably be on something like Thraben Inspector, or maybe the one black card in the pack, the Season of Loss, which I'm not really like too excited about, but it is a strong card. Yeah, that's where I was at with this pack. So I'd take Birds of Paradise.
What do you think, Teld?
So I kind of hone in on 3 cards, and Mop mentioned 2 of them. So there's Birds of Paradise is obviously like green mana, the 1-mana ones are actually just broken cards. They're unfair. They create such a tempo advantage in your opening hand, and will get you so many free wins when you slam a Bloated Contaminator into a Questing Beast on turns 2 and 3. Your opponent just will not be able to come back unless they're playing counter magic or have all the cheap removal in their hand. So Birds is like probably powerful enough that you should take it, and then from there you're like trying to draft green and just be trying to consider how you're going to beat the blue matchup. On a personal preference, I think I like Enduring Curiosity better. It's the kind of card that I like to play with. And so if I'm purely spiking, I'm probably going to reluctantly take birds, but I would probably talk myself into Enduring Curiosity on the average day. I think the best card in the pack is Reprieve. And we didn't mention that one. I think it's like heads and shoulders the best card in the pack, in that it is a completely degenerately broken card. However, I have a tendency to avoid drafting white early in this cube. I want to make sure it's open. And obviously if you pass Reprieve, white is not going to be open. So there's that consideration. It's a super unique effect. But I will say, I think the one thing I'll say against Enduring Curiosity is it and Mu Yanling are very, very similar effects, and so you might be able to just pass this pack and like see if you wheel one of them. I think it's a really difficult pack to draft because of that. I think if you're truly just spiking, I think you take birds. You do the Martin user rule and you just take the cheapest card that's super powerful. And but I will say Enduring Curiosity and Reprieve are more game breaking than birds, or they're going to feel like it. They're going to be the cards that are really burying your opponent, but birds is just going to, every time you open it in your opening hand, is going to probably increase your win rate by like 10%.
Yeah, I think if I'm shadowing someone, or if I'm like coaching someone or whatever, I lean towards Birds of Paradise. For me personally, I do not like playing these 1-mana dork decks. It's just not my style. I just don't enjoy them. I do not enjoy the ramp decks that rely on 1-mana dorks. I would snap off Reprieve here. Maybe snap off is a little bit aggressive, because Reprieve is at its best in white aggro, which is one of the worst decks right now. One of the decks that we're actively trying to like bolster over time, but I think Reprieve is like a linchpin card of white aggro and still like decent in like blue-white control decks or the Jeskai Spectrum or basically any deck that's playing white. Reprieve is great. Plus, there's a chance that you wheel Thraben Inspector. That seems unlikely. War Leader's Call could come back, and you could have a Boros deck with War Leader's Call and Reprieve, which sounds pretty strong to me. Obviously, starting with like Enduring Curiosity feels nice because you're just going to get a blue card back here, right? Even if it's not Mu Yanling or Kitsa, you're going to get Spell Snare or Phantom Interference as like a Quench variant or something. So, and if you don't, like, that's danger mode. Slick Sequence could even come back as well, which nobody's considering first picking. But so Season of Loss stands out because it is the only black card in the pack. It gives me a better avenue for like cutting black if I really wanted to do that. But I think Birds of Paradise is the strongest card. Reprieve is the card I would take, and my eye is also on Enduring Curiosity and Season of Loss.
Just to keep this interesting, I did mention Enduring Curiosity is the exact type of card I'm going to play. So moving forward, I think it would be really fun since we all have 3 cards that we can justifiably move into. If you guys just want to progress this where Mop starts with Birds, you start with Reprieve, and I'll start with Enduring Curiosity. That way we have a little more to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm locking in Reprieve.
So I just did a quick search. Since the beginning of the year, there's been 4 white decks that trophied, and one of them is actually the most recent trophy deck with the 450 cube has Reprieve. The other 3 did not. I was shocked to hear you guys talk so highly about Reprieve. I really think of it as like maybe a minor plus card in white, and I think white's in probably the worst of the 5 colors right now. I don't know what you guys think.
It is.
So I think
it is. Yeah, pretty non-contentious there.
Yeah. So I mean, if we're really trying to spike the draft, it looks like the last like 360 white deck was on October 30th. Chris won with blue-white control with Reprieve. So yeah, I that surprised me. I just thought it was worth talking about a little bit more. But
I do think Reprieve is the card that pushes the white decks over the white aggro decks, because like we just talked about how good Inferno Titan still is, and Reprieve is just like the exact card you need to like get over the hump of an opponent resolving an Inferno Titan. I think it's really good. It's very possible I overrate the card because like Remand is Remand, you know. It's not like the best card in the world, but I do think it's a top tier white card and like almost essential for getting the white aggro decks over the hump right now. It's just so your opponent doesn't resolve their Sweeper or their Titan of Industry or whatever. I would be keeping myself open to not be white aggro though. I'd be very happy to be like blue-white control or blue-white tempo or something like that if it presented itself. But I do think it's a top-tier white card personally.
Yeah, I agree with Tim, but I think my hesitancy of knowing that white is the worst color is this is kind of a pick that, even though I think Reprieve is among the best white cards, I really want to be getting past Reprieve, not first picking Reprieve.
Sure. I'm first picking it here.
Yeah, just to look at the same time, and I'm not doing this to like, argue with you guys, but just to give a little background, like I looked back and over the same time period since the end of October, there's been 9 green trophy decks, and 4 of them had Birds of Paradise. But obviously the other ones had other mana dorks as well. So I think that just reflects what we were talking about, like which colors are working right now.
There's like I draft even less than Mop these days when it comes to the mainline cube, but there is something to be said for like steering clear of, like, you don't want to ship one person at the table like a busted Simic deck, but I don't know. I don't really want to do that fight over mana dorks and have like 3 people all on green. Yeah, it's the best deck. Like Simic probably is like the best deck, or Green X, Blue X, whatever. But I would rather, especially in a cube environment where everything's just kind of baseline good, I would rather just avoid that fight, I think.
Well, I think the thing is that you actually don't need an infinite number of these dorks. So I do think starting off the draft with a card like Birds of Paradise means that you're not under the pressure of when you take a non-green dork. This is one of the ways to get into green, right? Is you open up the 1 mana green dork and you just take it. And this is probably the best of the 1 mana ones. It's got to be, right? It's just like makes all the colors, and if you ever get a piece of equipment on it, you can chip in some damage. So I mean, I do think in a purely power level thing, it's Birds of Paradise. It's the cheap card too. I'm gonna take, I think Enduring Curiosity is a relatively close second in terms of like deck expected value, even though Mu Yanling is a similar card to it. But I think like I think the Birds is probably, if you're truly just trying to 3-0 spike, is probably the best pick.
Mm-hmm. All right, Teld, do you want to read through pick 2?
Yep. So here in pack 2, we've got Restless Vinestalk, the blue-green creature land. We've got Deduce, a blue card draw spell. Tishana's Tidebinder, that's a Stifle variant. Bristly Bill, Spine Sower, one of green's best creatures, a bear with counter stuff synergies. You've got Iridescent Vine Lasher, the black landfall dork. You've got an Avacyn's Pilgrim. You've got Hallowed Fountain, Lush Portico, Hopeful Initiate, which is the white 1/2 with training. There's Wooded Foothills, Hazaret the Fervent, which is one of the best signals to get into a red deck. There's Knight of the Ebon Legion, a black 1-drop aggressive creature. Intrepid Adversary, a white creature that pumps your board. And Generous Int, the second cycle of fetch lands in the cube. So for me, knowing that I have Enduring Curiosity, this ends up, I think, being a pretty easy pick for me because Tishana's Tidebinder is a really messed up card. And I took a blue card that's kind of messed up and they both have flash, and I'm pretty happy to just like take that and not think too hard about it. If this were pack 1, I would take the fetch land over it. But given that I already have a good blue card and there's a good blue card I'm getting past, I'm not going to overthink this one.
I'm also feeling pretty good about this pack. So I took the Birds of Paradise in pack 1. I see 2 great green creatures to follow that up with, another Mana Dork in Avacyn's Pilgrim, or Bristly Bill, which, as Teld mentioned, is a very strong 2-drop. And then we have the fetch land. So while we were trying to avoid having this debate, I'm sort of in the middle of the debate right now. I think with a second pick, so there's 2 things I'm considering, right? I took a Birds of Paradise, which fixes for every type of mana. So I could take this Foothills and sort of just open myself up to either being in a base green beatdown deck or being in a multicolor pile, which, as I mentioned during my Inferno Titan speech, I enjoy being in. But if I'm trying to win, I'm not sure it's better than just like a straight like Gruul or like a other green beatdown deck. So I think if I'm trying to win, I'm taking one of the green creatures and continuing to cut that color. I honestly don't know which of these is better. I think in most cubes, if you're taking a dork, I'd want to follow it up with another dork and just take all the dorks and just make sure I have my acceleration. Being said, I do think Bristly Bill's probably the best 2-drop in green at this moment. I think I'm gonna, if you held a gun to my head, I would probably take the Bill and just go off of power level and just have that be my pick.
I think in your shoes, I would agree with you. I think the Foothills is really tempting because you want to have good mana. You've got a green card. It's a green fetch land. That being said, once you know you've got a green card, like I think Bristly Bill is also one of those ways you can kind of get one over on the control players. Like I said, when you're drafting green, you're considering how you're going to beat the control decks from pack 1. And I think Bill's a good way to do it because it's a card you can get under the counter magic or resolve potentially through their counter magic. They have to answer it, and it's super cheap. And if they don't answer it, they will die to it. I think that's a good way to tell the control player that they need to be respecting the fact that you have cheap plays and they're not just going to get to counter your 5-drops.
If I was playing the Timeless Cube, and I know I'm getting off topic here, I would take the Mana Dork because I think having that consistency and acceleration in the higher power level cubes is more important. But I don't think I think in the unrestricted cube, Bill is more likely to win you a game because it's going to go a little bit longer. You're not going to get comboed out. You're actually trying to win through beatdown. So I think Bill is probably better in this cube. Yeah.
I would also take Bill here, having started with Reprieve. Obviously, if I see this pack, I'm not super happy about the white cards. Hopeful Initiate's just not that good. Intrepid Adversary can be pretty strong, but yeah, again, I'm not trying to force myself down a white aggro path or a white go white path, but Bristly Bill is just powerful enough, and I think Selesnya actually has been doing well enough these days. It can go pretty wide. It's got a lot of Anthem effects that can close out a game. Bristly Bill is just enough more powerful than anything else in this pack that I'd be happy to take it. And then I would also be eyeballing a Lush Portico here, starting off with a white and green card, or Generous Ent on the wheel, or even Intrepid Adversary on the wheel if I did end up in some sort of green-white deck. Again, just not really a consideration for Avacyn's Pilgrim here, especially having passed the Birds of Paradise. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I think I would be happy enough getting Bristly Bill second pick, even starting off with the white card.
Yeah, I think Bill is a really interesting card in this pack because I think it's one of the few green cards that is just so head and shoulders above other options that it's like, I think it makes the pack way more interesting. And I think this is, I don't want to dive too deep into this, but I do think this is one of the reasons, one of my, I guess, gripes about fetch lands is kind of their power in like keeping you open in pick 1 specifically. Cause like here we are in pick 2 and we're all kind of moving away from fetch land. But I think if I was faced with this pack in like just pack 1, pick 1, I would probably still take the fetch land over everything else here. I don't necessarily know if you guys would, but I would probably take the fetch land here, but it is a little awkward too to pass a green fetch land with a Bill in the pack. Like that's maybe a bit of a non-bow, and maybe that's specifically kind of tied to Bill's ridiculous ceiling.
I would take Bill over fetch land personally, but
I might. Yeah,
discussion about fetches. So
yeah.
Pick 3.
Pick 3.
All right. So pick 3, we got Thunderous Velocipede, I think it's called. It's a new card from Aether Drift. It's a 3-mana vehicle. It puts counters on creatures that you play and is pretty big itself. Voyager Glidecar, another newer card, which is a 1-drop in white. That's also a vehicle. You have Temple Garden, the green-white Shockland. Showdown of the Skalds, a Boros Gold card. It's a saga that draws you cards. Very powerful. Unholy Heat, 1-mana red removal spell. Gixian Puppeteer, a 4-mana black creature that drains and gives you some card advantage. God Eternal Kefnet, a 4-mana blue flying bird god. Lolth Spider Queen, which is a 5-mana black planeswalker. Ghostfire Slice, which is a red removal spell. Witch Enchanter, which is a white modal land that destroys artifacts and enchantments. Inti, Seneschal of the Sun, which is a 2-mana red creature. Blood Artist, 2-mana black creature that drains. And then Ranger Class, which is a 2-mana basically green creature. It is a class, but you basically consider it in your creature slot. So, I mean, I've taken 2 green cards in my first 2 packs. So I'm looking at, so whenever I get to this point, I'm looking, is there anything that is worthwhile to make me like commit to a second color or start leaning towards a second color? Or do I just continue the path? Is there a strong enough green card that I don't have to do that? Because like we're trying to figure out like, are we staying open or are we like just continuing the path? We have 1 color, take that color. I'm a very strong believer that it's very useful to cut a color once you have that going. So I think there's nothing here so for pure strength alone, I think the strongest cards in this pack are probably Chefnet. And maybe Showdown of the Skalds is strong if you're in Boros colors. Inti is a strong 2-drop in red.
Okay.
But none of them are good enough to make me pass this Ranger class, which I think is a very strong and solid green 2-drop. And I'm just continuing to cut green. So I'm going to take the Ranger class.
Yeah, so I actually think the Rangers class is like probably the second or third best card in this pack behind the Unholy Heat and the Lolth. But I guess I have a thing against playing blue-red if you're not playing very, very aggressive. And with an Enduring Curiosity and a Tishana's Tidebinder, I'm definitely more blue-heavy. Lolth is powerful, but I kind of want to be in a black mid-range deck, and I'm probably not going to want to do that with my 2 flash creatures. I actually think this would be a hedge pick for me. I don't think Kefnet is good enough when I've already got a 4-drop. I don't want to put too much top into my deck immediately. And while I think Kefnet is pretty good into the creature decks, like just because of the size matters, I actually think I might talk myself into Rangers class here. I think it makes perfect sense for Mop. Again, we were talking about the beating blue matchups, and the Rangers class is very good against blue decks. But just in terms of trying to stay open here, these cards that I've got play really, really well in the Simic tempo space. And so I think the Rangers class being super cheap and just a really efficient card that lets me snowball a single creature, I think I would probably talk myself into that one, but I would not be committed to green from this spot. It would just be kind of keeping my hedges open here because there's no card that I actually like, at least in far as the color pair goes. Like Unholy Heat and Ghostfire Slice are both an Inti are all very good, but I want to be very base red, and I've already passed Hazoret.
Yeah. Let me clarify when I was talking about the strongest cards in the past. I was talking about non-green cards.
Oh, sure. Okay, I get you.
Tempt me. Yeah, but I do put Ranger class in the middle with all those other cards. I don't think I'm higher on Kefnet personally. I think it always plays well when I have it. I think
It
it's really
does.
hard to deal with, and it's just like a big roadblock. And with Blue's power level generally being higher, I think it's gotten more valuable because once you stabilize yourself, you give yourself time to draw more powerful cards.
Mhm.
But yeah, I like Ranger class, and that's why none of those other cards are really tempting me.
Mm. If I were still on all white cards, I would consider taking a red card here, especially having the War Leader's Call in back one, but I haven't gone Reprieve into Bristly Bill. I think I just take Temple Garden. Ranger class is good. I think Velocipede's quite good too. Witch Enchanter also, like, in a consideration for my seat, not for y'all's seat. But I think I just take Temple Garden, right? Like, I mean, just get your fixin' while you can. We already passed Lush Portico. We could wheel Generous Ent from the last pack, which would give me fetchable with Generous Ent. So I think I'm happy enough to just take Temple Garden. And if I wheel any of the Velocipede, Witch Enchanter, or Ranger class, I'll be happy enough. And honestly, if the deck ends up low curve and go wide enough, could even consider the Voyager Glide card, but it's really low on my list. So I think I like the fixin' from my seat.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I am interested not taking the Kefnet. I think I also would not take the Kefnet despite, like, sticking to one color. Just, you don't want your blue decks to be that high up on the curve to start with. So starting like what, 4-drop, 4-drop, 3-drop in blue doesn't sound that appealing, even though I totally agree Kefnet is a kind of messed up card that's kind of gotten better over time. It's part of the reason, actually, I brought this up recently. I think it's part of the reason that aggro doesn't do super hot these days, like white aggro decks, is because blue has cards like this that just brick wall all of the white aggressive creatures. So it's debatable whether God Eternal Kefnet is really supposed to be in the current iteration of the cube, given its size and how it stacks up against what's presumably the worst deck right now. So
yeah, just as a design thing, I think I agree with you. And I think one of the things that we could look into doing is that, like, we know the blue decks beat up on the green mid-range piles. And so, like, maybe if the mid-range decks are beating up on the aggro decks, but the aggro decks can't beat up on the blue decks, then we should try to soften up the blue decks against the aggro decks so that we can create that sort of rock, paper, scissors meta that typically results in, you know, at least playable standard formats.
yeah, notably somebody's getting hooked up with some red in this pack, though, getting past Hazaret into Inti or Ghost Fire Slice or Unholy Heat. Showdown of the Scalds and War Leader's Call, both in the first couple picks here.
Okay.
Tell
You want me to take this one?
pick?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do pick 4, and then let's check in and see how happy we are with what we've got so far.
Sure. So there's Bloodsoaked Champion, one of the black recursive 1-drops. There's Gissa the Hellraiser, which is Grave Titan at home. There's Unable to Scream, one of the blue swords to plowshares. Inferno Titan, we talked about that at the top of the episode. Slimefoot and Squee, which is our Jund Signpost, very powerful card. There's Soulscar Mage, one of the red 1-drop prowess creatures. There's Thopter Fabricator, which is in the line of Imricle's Messenger, Mischievous Mystic type cards. It's a vehicle that makes dudes. Anjay's Ravager, which I kind of forgot was still in the cube.
We can just ignore that card's in the pack. That card's getting cut sometime soon.
Elspeth's Sun's Champion, which is a surprisingly powerful 6-drop, frequently overperforms relative to what you would probably think a card that old does. Basri's Tomorrow's Champion, Cat Dad, and then there's Censor, blue counterspell, and Questing Beast, the primo green 4-drop.
Yeah, Teld, so you started blue card, and then shifted here.
Yeah, so I have a really interesting choice here. Yeah, I think I end up on Unable to Scream. The reason being that
I like that.
Yeah, so if I end up being heavy blue, which I am trying to cut blue, Unable to Scream is awesome. Like, this card overperforms super hard because there's not a strong sack or bounce archetype like there is in the Peasant Cube. It's still good in Peasant Cube, but here in the Unrestricted, it's much more of a your card is actually just dead. And if I end up in Simic, one of the things, if you look at the Simic trophies that is very consistent, is that they almost always have this card, because one of the ways for you to break that sort of blue-green has no good removal paradigm is to put a premium removal spell in your deck that's in your base colors. And so I think Unable to Scream makes a lot of sense. I'm going to be a little bit sad that I'm passing Questing Beast here because I just took a Rangers class, but I'd rather commit to the blue cards first. Like I said, I'm not over committing to the Rangers class. That was just a spec pick in an otherwise mediocre pack for me. And so I think the Unable to Scream makes a lot of sense. At least be able to play Control, at least be able to play Simic still. I think I'm pretty happy taking one of the best removal spells in the cube.
Well, at this point, if you're not taking the Questing Beast here and you've already passed Birds of Paradise and Avacyn's Pilgrim from your seat. Is this kind of like, do you still think there's a way you end up in Simic, or is not taking Quest and Beast here like saying I'm not going to be Simic?
I think it would have to depend on what we see down the road. Because like if it's open in pack 1, right, there's a good possibility to be open in pack 3, and I just have to accept that my pack 2 is going to be a little sketchy. So I don't think this is me giving up on it, because also the kind of Simic deck that I really like to draft doesn't care too much about dorks and doesn't care too much about the individual green creature. Like Questing Beast is a good threat, but it's not notably different than just, whatever, what's the other one? The other 4/4 haster.
Oddity,
yeah. Like, I don't particularly care. I just want, like, some beef, and really I want my curve to be super low. So Questing Beast will be a little bit of a miss, but I think I would still be happy to play the Unable to Scream, and we'll see what happens.
Mop, you're on Anya's Ravager?
Well, I think just to follow up on that talk, I mean, I think it's a good example, right? Like where people get a little too stuck on like, what signals am I sending? Like for Teld, like he's in control. He's in control for pack 1. He's in control for pack 3. He's deep into the blue color. Like he can keep passing green cards and not get anything pack 2, but that's okay. Like he's still for the majority of the draft going to continue to see these signals. So then it's just a question of like how much he values Questing Beast, like he answered. So for me, obviously, this is a much less interesting pack. There's 1 mono green card. It's probably on the upper end of power level for the pack. The Questing Beast is very strong. It's perfect for the deck I'm drafting so far. So I'm obviously slamming Questing Beast here and feeling pretty good about just like being able to cut green and have ongoing control of it for the rest of the draft. Other cards I would consider probably the Unable to Scream, also just a very efficient removal spell, putting me into a good color pair. And then I would actually give some thought to the Slimefoot and Squee, which is a powerful card. We know Jund is a powerful deck. There's 3 red cards and 2 black cards. There's been some red cards being passed this way. Like it seems like those colors are somewhat open. I wouldn't feel great having passed that Foothills, but we do have a Birds of Paradise. Like, we seem to be in a decent spot. But again, Questing Beast, I mean, I put it right around that power level anyway, so I'm just cutting green and taking the Questing Beast.
Yeah, QB's a top tier green card.
I actually think Tim has the most interesting decision here.
Yeah, so I think the cards I'm looking at, again, I started Reprieve, Bristly Bill, Temple Garden. I'm kind of locked in green-white here. Questing Beast is a consideration. Bossry is a consideration, but I don't even consider that a very good card. Its whole exert ability just doesn't really matter that much. And then there's Elspeth Sun's Champion, which I think would be the card I land on here, which I don't have a way to ramp it out, but it is a very powerful card, just like putting it into play for 6 mana. Like once it resolves, it's very hard for an opponent to get it off the board. It can play in a similar space with Reprieve, right? Like just to stall the game out till you get to the point where you slam Elspeth. I think Elspeth is very similar to Inferno Titan in terms of like 6-drops that have a very meaningful effect on the game. I don't love the idea of starting Reprieve Bristly Bill 6-drop, but I think Elspeth is way better than Bossry if I'm going to narrow it down to a white card. And I do probably put maybe too much consideration on like, oh, I've passed Birds of Paradise, I've passed Avacyn's Pilgrim, I've passed Velocipede. Like I'm not going to fight too hard over green, though. It could be that I'm supposed to take Quest and Beast here. I think I would take Elspeth, though.
Yeah, I think you could go either way. It kind of depends. I think if you're trying to be a little more of a beatdown deck, the Questing Beast makes a lot of sense. It keeps your curve lower. It's a great card to play on curve. I think if you're trying to be a bit more of the bigger deck, where you're trying to be able to compete with some of these cards on Haymaker's level, I think the Elspeth makes a lot of sense. So this kind of gives you some direction. I think from here, you're trying to play to the Elspeth if you're taking it, whereas the Questing Beast is just like another really good on-rate threat.
Part of it's also I'm just going to assume like white is going to be more open than green these days. So
I have been very impressed by Elspeth Sun's Champion. I got to play it as one of my only pieces of top end in a black-white deck, and like the games I drew it in where I was able to resolve it, it had a pretty meaningful impact on the game. So got me out of some sticky situations. I got to minus it and blow up 2 Torrential Gearhulks after a Sublime combo, which was cool. Still lost that game, but you know.
It was a good game though. It was a good game. You also got top decked on like 6 times in a row, but yeah, I'm not like thrilled, I think, to take the Elspeth here, especially because I assume a deck that has Bristly Bill already would rather have Quest Beast. I might be wrong about that, but again, I'm leaning more towards white than green. I'm leaning towards a worse color with the assumption that it'll be open more often here, and maybe that doesn't pan out some amount of the time. But I would assume I get more rewarded for being in white. It could be wrong. Could be totally wrong. Like, it could just be one of those drafts where not everybody's drafting green, and I should give myself an opportunity to be in, one of the better colors.
Yeah, one thing to remember about this too is that the bots aren't in on the meta of the cube, so they have their own rating system, and it prioritizes like once they're already in a color, really drafting into it, and like historical power levels and stuff. So this is we're doing our best here with what we've got, but this is your player draft might look a little bit different. You're not necessarily going to see a Questing Beast 4th pick in a player draft.
Oh yeah, and this is pick 4 with no lands in the pack, so clearly Persian's at the table.
Yeah,
like just sniping all the lands. Although there's lands I think in the rest of the packs coming up.
Oh, well, I have the most boring pack ever coming up.
Well, before we get there, like, how happy are you with the 4 picks you've started with? I have Reprieve, Bristly Bill, Temple Guard, and Elspeth, and I would say my card quality is high enough that I'm happy, even if I'm in one of the non-premier archetypes, though I think green-white actually does hold up decently well.
Yeah, so I've got Enduring Curiosity, Tishana's Tidebinder, Rangers class, and Able to Scream, and I'm probably thinking at this point that Rangers class is like, like I said, not 100% to play it, but I gave up very little in the pack to take it. I'm pretty happy. I mean, I love starting with these flashy creatures plus super cheap premium spell that I can play plus hold up counter magic or one of these flash creatures. I'm in my zone right now.
I have Birds of Paradise, Bristly Bill, Ranger class, and Questing Beast, obviously. Very good on power level. I think if I'm missing anything, I gotta think about like interaction and stuff like that. How am I gonna beat the control decks? But very happy to like be in one color with 4 quality cards in that color.
All right, pick 5 is probably gonna make us all diverge a little bit, possibly. Mop, do you want to read out pick 5 for us?
Sure. So we have Sleep Cursed Fairy, 1-drop in blue, the Speed Demon, which is a 5-mana black mythic, flyer demon, big boy. Transmigrant's Crown, which is a mostly black. It is colorless. It's an equipment that like basically draws you cards when one of your creature dies. A blue-red dual land, the Verge. We have the Gastal Thrill Seeker, which is a 3-mana red aggressive, basically creature. It's a vehicle, but it functions as a creature. Casualties of War, which is a 6-mana, very powerful sorcery that destroys lots of things. That's Golgari colors. Horrific Assault, which is a 1-mana removal spell in green. Birthday Escape, which is a 1-mana cantrip in blue. Fateful Absence, which is a 2-mana white removal spell. Time Warp, take an extra turn for 5 mana in blue. And Quag Feast, which is a newer 2-mana black removal spell from the newest set.
Mob, do you mind if I go ahead and hop in my pick? Because it's going to take me about 3 seconds.
Go ahead.
I'm taking Time Warp. There's not really any contention here. This is the easiest Time Warp of my life. Okay, carry on.
Don't you wish you had that Kefnet now? No, all right. So I think it's a pretty easy one for me as well. Same idea with the last pack. There's 1 green card, and I think it's a pretty good green card. Horrific Assault is a super efficient. I was just talking about how I didn't have interaction, things like that. So I'm very happy taking this Horrific Assault. The other considerations would be Casualties of War, which has green. Also thinking about going into Golgari. I think green-black is not a great color combination, not something I necessarily want to be in. Maybe if I had taken the Slimefoot and Squee and was feeling adventurous with my last pick, I would take the Casualties because it is super powerful. But yeah, I'm mono green right now. I'm happy with the removal spell.
Yeah, I think you could diverge here, right? Is there any consideration for Time Warp, Mop?
For me?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Absolutely not. No, I would not like Time Warp in the deck I have right now. I don't like. So, I mean, we've talked at length about Simic being powerful, and it seems like we're getting past lots of blue cards. I like Time Warp in like my more like grindy type things, and I think right now I'm like slanting a little more aggressive green. And I just think a 1-mana removal spell, cutting this color, continuing on the path, just makes so much more sense.
I think Time Warp in your deck sounds really powerful. My issue with here is that because you don't have any counter magic yet, if you take it, you end up in this weird spot where like it just makes your deck blow out other decks you're already favored against super hard, but then it's like 5 mana counterspell bait for the blue matchup, and I don't necessarily think that's where you want to be.
Yeah. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, am I casting it on turn 4, like off a mana dork, when I have like one creature in play? It's like it's something you want to play later in the game, and it can be powerful in situations. I just don't think I'm going to have the card advantage. I'm probably not going to have a lot of planeswalkers in my deck. It just doesn't make sense for like a Simic beatdown deck.
I definitely
want to take it.
Yeah, I definitely disagree with you on that.
It can, but I just don't see like the upside in comparison to continuing to cut a color and like, yeah.
Yeah, I think in your shoes, I would take the Horrific Assault or take a flyer on the Casualties of War as well. I think the Time Warp here, you're just so favored into the kind of decks where Time Warp is going to be good. There's plenty of Simic decks where I've been happy to play Time Warp. The Bant Cocaine style decks, I'm pretty happy to play those because sometimes you're in very close races. But I don't think your races are going to be super close. I think you're going to be beefing on people pretty hard with like Rangers class and your Questing Beast having Vigilance and all that sort of stuff. I think you're really looking, like you said, for some interaction. So I think the Casualties is an interesting card, though. I mean, I guess the double blacks you probably should just take the cheaper card here. But I do think it's interesting if you wheel it. It could be an interesting place to go because you're not unlikely to wheel it.
This is pretty easy Fateful Absence for me. Like the only green or white card I could even consider here is Fateful Absence or Horrific Assault. I didn't take Questing Beast, so Horrific Assault makes a lot less sense with the pile of cards I have, so I'll just lock up a cheap removal spell here. Fateful Absence, I don't love Fateful Absence. I hate, again, part of the reason I think white aggro is not great is like some portion of its removal is like Doomblade with downside, while every other deck gets to play Doomblade with upside, or just Doomblade rather. But it's a good enough removal spell. It's clean, efficient. It plays nicely with Reprieve, right? Just being able to bounce, like deal with things on the stack versus deal with permanents in play. It also kills Planeswalkers, which is relevant. So yeah, I take Reprieve, or I take Fateful Absence here. I end up with Reprieve, Bristly Bill, Temple Garden, Elspeth, Fateful Absence, and still kind of giving myself the out to be like white X non-green. Like I could drop Bristly Bill, Temple Garden here if I had a really strong incentive to do it. Like if maybe I got past Quintorius in the next pack or something, like I could see having my pile be Reprieve, Elspeth, Fateful Absence, Quintorius, and just like letting go of the Bristly Bill, Temple Garden.
What's funny is looking at the pack, I agree that you should take Fateful Absence, but I actually like Time Warp more for you. And thinking about going into like blue-white, you have that Elspeth, which is a super powerful card to pair with Time Warp. You have Reprieve. You could go into like a more controlling strategy potentially. So I find it more interesting for your deck even than mine. But I agree, the Absence is probably the right pick.
Yeah, there might be a world where Time Warp fits here. Like I said, when I took the Reprieve at the beginning, blue-white tempo, blue-white control is a place I don't mind ending up. Time Warp would give me that reason. The blue has not been super strong or super dense in the packs, and by this point I would have passed like Enduring Curiosity, Tashana's Tidebinder, Kefnet. So I don't know that I want to start moving into blue here, but I think pack 1 had like 5 blue cards or something, so I would almost guarantee getting a blue card back from pack 1 on the wheel. But yeah, I'll go ahead and lock in Fateful Absence here and continue the path of just straight green-white. All right, pick 6. I'll go ahead and read through this one real quick. So Day of Judgment, 4 mana, destroy all creatures in white. Woe Strider, 3 mana, Aristocrats card. You can sack creatures to scry 1. Tyvar Stand, the green X, give a creature hexproof, indestructible, and +X/+X. Voracious Hydra, another X spell in green that comes in with either double counters or fight something. It's a big trampler. The Goose Mother, the blue-green X. All the X spells got filtered into this pack, apparently. The Goose Mother comes in with X +1/+1 counters, makes a bunch of food tokens, and when it attacks, you can sack a food to draw a card. Basically just a big Hydra with some card advantage. Spymaster's Vault, a black utility land. You don't activate it that often, but if a creature's died, you can target something to connive a bunch of times based on the number of creatures that died this turn. Razorverge Thicket, green-white mana fixin'. Underground Mortuary, green-black surveil land. And then there's Bridgeworks Battle, which is the MDFC +2/+2 and fight a creature that you can also just play as a tapped green source. And then Sanguine Evangelist, which is 3 mana for a 2/1 battle cry that makes a 1/1 black bat when it enters or when it dies. So this is the first pack for me that I think is like very interesting. Like there's, I mean, I'm not taking Day of Judgment, but Tyvar Stand is an excellent green card in basically any deck that's playing green creatures. You know, it's a way to protect your bristly bill that you've invested a lot of time and +1 counters into. I don't think my deck is super well set up for Voracious Hydra, though I think it's always a fine curve filler if you just need another creature. There's obviously Razor Verge Thicket here for me if I wanted to take another piece of fixin'. I do value the MDFCs pretty highly, so Bridgeworks Battle is appealing. And then there's Sanguine Evangelist, which is just an excellent go wide white card. I think I lean Evangelist here to kind of continue playing into this like beat down, go wide, like smack my opponent around thing. Trying to leverage Reprieve as kind of like a way to, I guess, close out the game. It does feel a little sad letting the Razor Verge Thicket go, but I'm still kind of hoping the Lush Portigo comes back. I am curious what you guys think would be the pick for my deck here, but I think it's a close but clear Evangelist. I think my deck is still kind of, with the first 5 picks I have, like leaning towards a creature-based aggressive deck.
I think the pick for you here comes down to that choice we made a few packs ago of Elspeth versus Question Beast, because I think if you had the Question Beast, you just take the Tyvar Stand, and you'd be very happy about that. But I think having the Elspeth makes me want the Evangelist a little better, simply because the Elspeth doesn't really interact favorably with the Tyvar Stand, and I think that's where like your deck's kind of going towards, is this, like you said, more mid-rangey deck. It works really well with the Bristly Bill, but I like the Evangelist. I think you're leaning a little more towards the white side of things. I think I'm taking Tyvar Stand here. I'm not super excited, even though Tyvar Stand is a absolutely premium card. It's a top 5 green card in the cube. It's super great. That being said, I'm not 100% sure I'm playing green, but also there's no blue card in this pack. And I mean, I could take Day of Judgment here and try to get into white, but like, while I was talking about not overthinking cards we've passed, one thing I do think you need to think about is the lands that you've passed. And I did pass a Hallowed Fountain. Knowing that you're not getting the Hallowed Fountain, so you're going to have a very difficult time putting together a Fetch Shock mana base at any point, or any of the Cycle Shock mana base. I'm not super excited about that. And I don't think Wraths are particularly very good, especially not when I'm playing Unable to Scream, Enduring Curiosity, and Shaw's Tidebinder, which all don't really want to play with a Wrath. So I think all of that leads me to want to take Tyvar Stand here and just take the best card available. And just kind of, keep myself open, knowing that I've got the Rangers class and the Tyvar Stand if I end up in Simic.
Makes sense.
For your deck, Tim, again, similar to the last pack, I would consider heavily the Day of Judgment. You actually have more control cards than aggro cards at this point, even taking the Fateful Absence. I mean, same idea. You have Reprieve, Fateful Absence, you have you could have this Wrath, you have Elspeth, which I feel like fits more into a controlling strategy. So I think I would heavily consider that. I think if you favor like the more aggressive strategies, yeah, it's between Evangelist and Tyvar Stand. It's certainly a good sign that a green-white land is making it this far. And out of those two, I'd probably say Evangelist would be the pick, just to keep you more into one color again. But yeah, I mean, I think blue-white control is open in your seat right now, and I think a Wrath would be kind of perfect for that.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I am kind of banking on like, because if you look back at the previous packs, like the cards that are going to wheel for me are going to be things like Intrepid Adversary and Thraben Inspector,
or that Hallowed Fountain. The Hallowed Fountain was only in pack 2. Like
it could wheel. So, it's probably not going to, especially since we established Persians at the table. So not only is Persian taking all the lands, but he's also hyping up the lands to everybody else, so they need to take them too. But yeah, I think based on the cards that, and I don't know in the moment, like I wouldn't be able to look back at the old packs and like remember every single card that's going to wheel, but
exactly, yeah.
Having that luxury right now, like the white cards that are going to wheel are all cheap creatures. So I think given that information, I do like having the creature based pick here instead of the control pick.
For me, I'd take Tyvar Stand. Same idea. Like I'm in green. I think the modal land is a reasonable thing, but I've come up a lot on Tyvar Stand. It actually just got added to Timeless Cube. Like it's just very flexible. It gives me play against those more controlling strategies. Can kill people out of nowhere. I think it's perfect. So I'm happy to just take my 6th green card in a row and grab Tyvar Stand.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, you don't necessarily want to go in trying to be monocolored, but if the best cards in every pack are going to be the same color, like there's no reason not to. it's only at the point where you're giving up something really powerful in another color that you're probably not supposed to be monocolored. But I like Mop's path here of just like really getting rewarded for taking that Birds of Paradise and just sticking to the best green card that's shown up in every pack. I did just peek ahead. That might not be the case for the next couple picks. But yeah, Teld, do you want to read off pick number 7? We got 2 packs left here.
Yeah, so pick number 7, we've got Abundant Harvest, a green cantrip. Torrential Gearhulk, the big Snapcaster Mage effect. There's Sauron's Ransom, the blue-black card draw spell. Genderous Plunder, a red aggressive 2-drop. Zoraline, Cosmos Collar, the Orzhov Bat, the Sun Titan effects things. Ornery Tumblewag, a green +1/+1 counter card. Rite of Oblivion, a white-black gold card removal spell. Inquisition of Kozilek, the black discard spell. And Amped Raptor, one of the payoffs for being mono-red. So this is a really bad pack given what I currently have in my pool. I'm really, really disappointed on this one. I'm not 100% sure what I'm supposed to take here because I think the Gearhulk is the most powerful card that I would have access to. However, when I look at my pile, I have Tyvar Stand, and that's it for instant so far. I'm not really wanting to be a heavy instance deck necessarily if I'm playing this particular... I guess I am, but I don't necessarily want to play a blue 6-drop. Abundant Harvest is pretty anemic in a deck like this. I could take it just to be able to kind of keep some consistency. Ornery Tumblewag's okay, but again, like 3 mana sorcery card. I'm not necessarily going to be locked in on a bunch of big creatures yet. I think I probably land on Torrential Gearhulk, but I'm not necessarily excited about it because it's going to kind of force me to draft my deck moving forward in a very specific kind of way because I'm going to need to get enough instants and sorceries to manage this while also probably, if I'm ever playing these green cards, also going to have to manage the creature side of it. But given that I have 4 pretty good blue grindy control cards, I think I take the Gearhulk here and I'm okay with it and just like kind of stay, again, going to just see what happens on the wheel.
Yeah, you've got 2 whole packs to go. It's not too hard to make Gearhulk work here.
Yeah.
There's Ornery Tumblewag and Abundant Harvest. Are those strong enough green cards to stay the course?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. So the cards, again, Abundant Harvest, the cantrip, Tumblewag, the 3-drop, both of which are very, like, replaceable. Abundant Harvest, I just don't see it being, like, worthwhile in this deck. Like, I'm fine playing it, but, you know, if I'm solidly into green, I'm clearly not going to be playing like many colors. I just don't really see it being a very high pick. I think whenever you're green, I think a color I really like pairing with that is red, and going for those aggressive Gruul decks. That being said, there wasn't a single red card in the last pack. I do think Generous Plunderer is probably the best card to pair with what I have right now. The question is it that much better than Tumblewag to not just keep cutting green and like sort of hedging a little bit? And I don't think it is. I think I would just take Tumblewag in this situation. But it's a pretty bad pack for me, kind of underwhelming. But just to fill out the curve, I don't have any 3-drops, so I think I take Tumblewag.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Bristly Bill and the Rangers class already stacking +1 counters, I think you have enough synergies that the Tumblewag is probably a pretty good pick here. Yeah. I will say I think Abundant Harvest, one advantage of it is one of the only kind of green cantrips, or cantrips in general, that actually can replace a land 1-for-1 because you can always dig for a land. So as long as you have at least 1 land in your opener, and you wouldn't keep a 1-lander, right? So but you know, so if your Abundant Harvest would have been your 17th land, you would be mulliganing that hand anyways. But if you open land Abundant Harvest, now if you draw lands, you can use the Abundant Harvest to find more gas down the road. If not, you have a pretty cheap way of cycling for your land. I think I would still be on Tumblewag here, but I do think Abundant Harvest has a pretty specific niche in the being able to literally be like land 17 in your deck.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm on a green-white pile right now. The only mono green or mono white cards at all are the same ones: Abundant Harvest, Tumblewag. I'm not excited about Harvest with my pile either. Tumblewag is fine. I also have Bristly Bill at this point. It's kind of like a mini combo that matters. There are a couple ways to make Tumblewag really pop off, though it usually is matchup dependent. Like if you're playing against someone who's just not removing your creatures, you get to go completely nuts with Tumblewag. That's usually not the case. I could also consider one of the white-black cards here.
I was going to say, you got Zoraline for the bat synergy.
Do I have a bat? Oh, I do. I have Sanguine Evangelist, yeah. Zoraline, I think, is fine. It's a little less exciting as a splash because, like, it's going to be really hard to get the ETB. It's, for those who don't know, it's 1 white black, and then when it enters, you can pay white black and 2 life to bring back a small permanent. You can do that when it attacks as well, but I'm just not going to be able to produce white, white, black, black that often, I don't think, with the cards I've started with. Though there's still plenty of time. I think I would lean Rite of Oblivion here. But, I mean, was there anything that could wheel in black? Season of Loss would not come back, right?
Probably not, no.
Yeah, I don't
think it'd be good, yeah.
I mean, the Evangelist is good with Rite of Oblivion. Obviously, Elspeth is good enough with Rite of Oblivion, but that's not really a combo to use your 6-drop to turn on Rite of Oblivion. So, I don't know. I think there's still a world, especially seeing Zoraline and Rite of Oblivion in this pack, and Black-White is just, like, never drafted by anyone these days. I think there's a rider here. I'm giving up on Tumblewag, which is fine, but I'm doing it for I think a very powerful card in a deck that when it does come together is really, really strong. So I think I would take a rider on Rite of Oblivion and be a little bit sad about it that there's not like the gambit of like trying to move into the open white lane hasn't panned out. Obviously, like, this was drafted by bots. And the bots are just like, take all the lands and take all the gold cards and blah, 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 blah. So it could just be that the bots randomly drafted white cards. But yeah, I'd be a little bit sad that gambit didn't work off. I would take Rite of Oblivion here and give up on the Tumblewag, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. You take a black-white card here. If 2 strong black-white cards made it all the way around the table, it means it's open. And, you know, it's just a much higher upside for you. So I like taking one of those cards.
Yeah, I will say by pick 7, I'm not feeling amazing about my pile of cards. Again, the card quality from top to bottom is good enough, but like thematically, it's still trying to figure out like what is my deck actually trying to do. So we'll stop after pick 8, but the deck would definitely need a lot of help from the wheels and the additional packs later on. But yeah, why don't we close out? Teld, do you want to read off pick 8? Has 8 cards left before we get to the wheel.
Yeah, so pack 8, we have Chainsaw, which is a red equipment that lightning strikes something when it enters play and then revs up to become a big threat. Night's Whisper, the black draw spell. Kaito, Cunning Infiltrator, which is a blue planeswalker from Foundations. Undercity Sewer, the blue-black surveil land. Monastery Swiftspear, the other red prowess creature. Godless Shrine, the white-black shock. There's Invasion of Ix, which is Ixalan, which is 1 in a green for a cantrip that flips into a 4/3, and then Lord Skitter Sewer King, which is a graveyard hate piece that is also a token engine. So Tim's gonna have some interesting decisions on this pick. I think this is a pretty. I think I probably take Invasion of Ix here. I mean, I'm again not super certain I'm supposed to be Simic necessarily, but also Kaito is definitely replaceable. It has, we tried it out and I don't think it's been super good. I also don't have any of the evasive 2 mana blue creatures yet, which are kind of what you want to pair with this card. I mean, Chainsaw, I could take a rider on it. It's pretty good, but I've already explained why I don't really want to be a base blue Izzet deck. There's a couple of lands here, which it's nice of Persian to have allowed us to have lands to choose from. Could definitely take Undercity Sewer here if I wanted. I haven't seen much in the way of black cards, but, if I get a fetch that can work with it, or if I'm end up playing in a grindy pile, maybe I'm interested in it. I think for me, this comes down to between Undercity Sewer and Invasion of Ixalan, and when I already have 2 pretty good green cards, I think I'm going to take the Invasion, but I could be sold that this should just be the Undercity Sewer, but I'm not really happy about this pack regardless of what happens.
Yeah, I could see it going either way. I think this would be preference. It is funny that, like, even not starting with the Birds of Paradise, we both lean towards the green cards. Like, a lot of green cards are just very powerful, so we both ended up touching green at some point, even though Mop got kind of like the free ride of just green card into green card into green card. But for me, I think it's Godless Shrine, though. Like, the deck having taken, Rite of Oblivion, like, really wants Lord Skitter now. But if I'm going to play 3 colors, I just need to take the Godless Shrine. Like, you got to eat your vegetables. So I'll take the Shrine here, and then I don't know what black cards could wheel necessarily. Looking back, there's like Blood Artist in a pack, which people don't respect Blood Artist, so there's a actually pretty decent chance I could get that back. Again, I don't think Season of Loss is coming back, but I think I take Godless Shrine here, and my deck's like a little bit messy. It's definitely in the Abzan space. It doesn't know if it wants to be doing something more aristocratic or something more controlling or something more beat down, like Bristly Bill plus Rite of Oblivion don't usually make the same deck. So I'm not like super thrilled with where things ended up. And obviously it all started with like starting with a white card and having kind of a plan that didn't really pan out. But yeah, just to wrap it up, that's a Godless Shrine for me for pick 8.
Yep. And again, I don't have a very interesting pick. There's one green card. It's probably the best card of the pack. The only other card I might consider is like Chainsaw, again, to pair red with my green cards. But I think Invasion of Ixalan, as opposed to Abundant Harvest, I mean, I think gives you a little more game in a lot of matchups, and I value a little bit higher. So I'm happy to just make it a clean sweep of 8 green cards in a row. And I mean, I'm feeling great because I haven't passed any green cards in the last few packs. So, like, I think we're in a really good position.
Yeah, you've also been in that nice spot if you're drafting green, you got all green cards, but also the best card in the pack was debatably a green card in every single pack. Yeah, I think getting Invasion of Ixalan pick 8 too is, I mean, like, you can't judge too much on signals still, but like, I think that is a huge signal that maybe I overvalue that card a little bit just because other people undervalue it. But Invasion of Ixalan is very powerful. It's good into the blue matchups because they have to, you cycle your card and they have to respect the fact that you can flip it, and it's a resilient creature once you do. Great card, really excited about that one for your deck, especially because you're just like on the all permanent pile pretty much.
Yeah, it's incredible with Quest and Beast too. Like sometimes you just drop it and flip it.
Yeah. Yep. So I think wrapping up these picks, I think Mop probably has the best deck of the bunch of us right now, just by
Mop's got the easy best, and the most open like path moving forward. Though I don't know what you would be expecting to wheel. Like I would assume by the end of this pack you will have cards of other colors as like maybe considerations, but you're still looking to like stick to green as much as possible. Teld, can you recap your pile real quick and then tell us like where you're hoping to go from here, if there were any wheels that you're going to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, so I've got Enduring Curiosity, Tishana's Tidebinder, Ranger's Class, Unable to Screen, Time Warp, Tyvar Stand, Torrential Gearhulk, and Invasion of Ixalan. And I think my power level is kind of through the roof, to be honest. I think I have just an exceptionally good pile of cards here. And I think the green cards I have are going to play pretty well with my blue cards. I don't think I've really got a lot of clunk going on. Maybe the Invasion of Ixalan's a little clunky if I'm trying to make this Torrential Gearhulk work. That could be a point of contention. But I'm pretty happy about this. I think I'm really looking forward to this wheel pick because I should get some pretty... I'm going to be really disappointed if there's no blue cards, given that there were like 5 of them in pack 1. So that's going to tell me something is like, how many blue cards do I wheel? If it's 1 or 2, I'm going to be a little concerned, but if it's several blue cards, I'm going to be pretty happy about it. I'd be happy to wheel either of the blue counter spells, which I think are the most reasonable things that I could wheel out of this pack. Probably would like Spell Snare better than Phantom Interference, because that's another card that I can't play with my Torrential Gearhulk. If I wield the Muyanling, which I think is extremely unlikely, I'm through the roof. If I wield the Kitsa, I'm going to Windmill Slam that as well and be pretty content with it. So I think I've got a good wheel out of pack 1 and potentially could wheel something in pack 2, given that there was a blue-green manland, as well as like the Deduce and the Generous Ent. I don't think the Generous Ent's particularly likely to wield, but I could get that. After that pack's definitely going to dry up for me. So we'll see if I get anything else, but I'm pretty content with it. I just need to get some fixing and really get these couple of different little synergies I've got going. I really want to get some of the evasive blue 2-drops, just get more two mana plays. Maybe if I get lucky, I also pick up one of the better 2-mana green dorks. If I'm playing Gearhulk and Time Warp and stuff, I wouldn't mind having 1 or 2 of those, though I don't necessarily want to play the 1-mana dorks because they have no upside if you draw them late, and this is the kind of deck that could go a little later. So I'm a little nervous if because I'm pulled in 2 different directions a little bit, but I think my card quality is super high, and I'm probably pretty content at the moment in this draft.
Yeah, I think I'm the least content of the 3, but like I said, I'll need to definitely come down on a strategy in pack 2 and just kind of stick to it. Though looking like black-white was open towards the end of that seat, so maybe like sometimes you do just start off in a certain lane and then you got to move off of it. Like I took Bristly Bill as my only green card and I have a temple guarded, so I think it's actually more likely I end up in black-white from where I'm at than green-white. And I got the Godless Shrine on pick 8, so I have a little bit of fixing there. Hopefully Blood Artist would wheel at that point. And I don't, how many, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
it looks like there could be a last pick Zorleen as well.
How unrealistic is it to hope to get that Thraben Inspector on the wheel?
I doubt it. People love Thraben Inspector, though. I don't know. It's not inconceivable that it'll come back. That pack was pretty good.
Yeah.
And people know that White's not like excellent or anything. Obviously, I'd be thrilled if Thraben Inspector came back, but I would assume that I would get nothing of note. I don't really want to play Regal Bunnicorn, so.
Yeah, I like Regal Bunnicorn, but you do have to be aggressive. So if you end up trying to be a grind pile, it could be a little awkward. But it does pair really well with your Sanguine Evangelist, just being able to, play it hopefully you have a 1-drop. You go like 1-drop Regal Bunnicorn into Sanguine Evangelist, and then suddenly you've got like a Tarmogoyf attacking on for 5 on turn 3 or whatever.
Yeah, you can cheese people with Bunnicorn sometimes. Just not a card I particularly like to play with that much. But yeah, there we go. The first eight picks. Hopefully this was engaging to the listener. Hopefully this was interesting for the host here.
Yeah, I'm going to recap people. If Chris were here, I'm going to channel my inner Chris. All right, first pick, or Windmill Slam and Season of Loss. I'm going to force Black Sack. Second pick, we're going to take Knight of the Ebon Legion for my Black Sack deck. Third pick, we'll take Lulth for our Black Sack deck. And, we'll just be guys, the best cards available were Black Sack cards.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. We should have done what would Chris do here?
Yeah. I hope he knows that's said with all love. But... I do think those would be his picks, but it's said with all love.
Right. And it would be like a reasonable deck. I mean, I think that just goes to show, like, we're talking about this from like a pure power level perspective, but in reality, lots of times you're just cubing and you want to do something that you want to have fun with, and you could see there's lots of strategies open. We talked about like Tim Seat potentially having a control strategy. So, I mean, there was a million different ways to go with this.
That's why we have Omnath in this cube, right? Sometimes people just want to sit down and draft like the 4-color nonsense deck.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that really appeals about Cube is there's definitely quote unquote wrong picks, but there's not necessarily a right pick all the time, right? Like we talked about, Birds of Paradise is probably the best pick out of that first pack, but there were a couple of different directions, as you see, that you can go without giving up too much on power. So I think that's one of the things that draws to people to Cube. Is like you said, sometimes you just sit down and you're like, all right, I want to play this, and there's a pretty good odds that unless you're just having to hard force something and a bunch of other people are in it, you can probably play more. You can at least draft, if you draft reasonably well, you can move in the direction of your preferences.
Yeah, which I obviously have preferences. Like that's why I didn't take Birds of Paradise. I don't like those mana dork style decks. They high roll sometimes, they low roll sometimes. I'm just not a fan of that play style. But yeah, unless you guys have any other thoughts, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. I would encourage people to try this exercise for themselves as well. Hopefully you can share what your picks from these first 8 packs would have been, and let us know if you also ended up mono green by the end of pack 1, or if you ended up doing whatever the hell I ended up doing. That said, I would actually like to ask the listener as well. Like we normally almost exclusively do cube design conversations on this podcast, and this is more of like a draft advice / gameplay advice episode, which we don't do very often. If people want to hear more stuff like that, let us know. If you want to hear gameplay advice, draft advice, I would love to have more conversations about that, but I do want to make sure that's something the listeners actually want. So any closing thoughts here before we wrap this bad boy up?
I think my pack 2 is going to be real mid, and then my pack 3 will be good.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to summarize, like, since this is about draft strategy, I think the thing that was shown in my draft, and something I feel very strongly about, especially if you don't have a lot of experience in Cube, is that picking one color and sticking to it and claiming a color can make your draft go a lot smoother. So, if we know this stuff sort of inside and out, but if you're drafting the Cube for the first time, take powerful card. If you see something in that line and you aren't sure what else to do, just keep the path. It won't always work out perfectly, but you're going to like wind up in a place where like you're going to have a functional deck, and again, we don't want to oversell the signals that you're sending, but it usually works out well if you sort of claim a color.
Yeah, you saw kind of like each of us ended up being in various levels of dysfunction with regards to how many colors we're having to pull together, or like how many different kinds of picks we took. Like Mop's draft, is one of those things where it's like very, obviously it kind of lined up for him, but you're in this, you carved out your lane. You've got a very clear game plan. Whereas mine's a little more disjointed, and then Tim's kind of having to flop all over the place a little bit just because it's like the packs didn't line up. And sometimes that's going to happen. That's the other thing is this is a live event. This isn't something that's prescripted, right? You don't necessarily know what's going to be given to you. And sometimes the cards are not going to line up, and your job as a drafter is to make the best of sometimes a bad situation. Like I think Tim will end up with a good deck, but here at the first 8, his deck looks a little bit all over the place, but he's a good drafter. So I know he's going to end up with a good deck.
Yeah, I would feel confident by the end of the draft that I would have a direction, especially seeing all that black-white stuff at the end. But yeah, that's a good point, Mop, is they mentioned this a lot for retail limited, the Lords of Limited, getting deeper into one color and just keeping yourself open. Like, as long as you're not giving up anything super powerful, but like, if there's a tiebreaker, like for me, it was Quest and Beast versus Elspeth. If there's a tiebreaker, like just sticking to the card that like is closer to your colors, which I guess that's a terrible example because I had Bristly Bill at that point, but but yeah, you get the point. Is the closer you can stick to one color without giving up on like too much power or consistency or anything like that, the better off you are. And if you do end up monocolored somehow, which again is not like supported in any of the colors in this cube necessarily, but it can happen. Like even then, you don't have to fight over lands either, which is always a nice feeling. Like you get to just take the best card from every pack. So that's nice.
Yeah, I think the other rule that, to make sure we remember is I think it's usually called the Juza rule, which is basically if you're looking at 2 cards and you're pretty close on them, like you don't have a particular preference, you just think they're both about the same. Early in the draft, you should go for the cheaper card. You can always get more expensive cards, but something like a Birds of Paradise in this case, for example, was very good because it's a super cheap card. You're always going to be able to play it in your opening hand, and it's going to make your deck more consistent. Whereas something like what I took, which is Enduring Curiosity, I am taking a bit of a rider on a more expensive and powerful card, but like then I get offered something like Kefnet, and it's a little bit awkward because I don't want to take the Kefnet and clunk up my draft, right?
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and close it out there. Remember that you can find us on Twitter at Jank Diver Gaming, on youtube.com/Jank Diver Gaming, and you can find Teld streaming on twitch.tv/Teld Talks, TELD Talks. Our next couple episodes will be Dragonstorm, Tarkir Dragonstorm review episodes. We'll have I think actually the way we're going to schedule it out, we'll probably have the Peasant episode before the mainline episode this time, since we'll be recording the mainline episode 2 weeks from today. Kind of bummed the way things lined up. I think the set is fully spoiled by next week, but it doesn't line up with our schedule. But the set looks awesome. We're going to be really excited to talk about it. But that is going to do it for this one. Remember to check out our socials. Remember to check out these packs and let us know what you would do in the first 8 picks of this draft. And remember to come find us in the Discord and give us your opinions. Come draft with us. Give us some feedback on the cube. Help us help make it a better environment for everyone. That's going to go and do it. Thanks for watching. And hey, Mop, thanks for filling in as well.
Yeah, I'll see you guys in 2027.
All right, catch y'all later.
All right, no sign off?
No, I got a quick sign off. Got a very quick sign off. So this is episode 41, which some people might numerically write as 041, right? And I thought in a commemoration of episode 041, we would, or I could go over some of my favorite 041s in Magic the Gathering. Situations where you basically just rip up a card for no value at all, like a straight up 041. Worse than a 1-for-1. So first off, mulliganing. I've always thought of mulliganing as like giving your opponent a free Thoughtseize. It sucks. Everybody hates it. Straight up 0-for-1. Duressing your opponent, and they have no targets in hand. Straight up 0-for-1. You rip up your duress, you put it in the graveyard.
Made better by the fact that they immediately top deck a banger spell.
It always happens. Always happens. You could say Thoughtseize as well, but if your opponent has no Thoughtseizable cards, like, you're probably fine with that exchange. Jamming into Secret Reach, which, you would think with Arena's gigantic, reach symbol that they have now, this wouldn't happen, but I still do it sometimes. Basically just tossing a flying creature into a giant reach creature that you didn't have to attack into. This one happened in a cube draft a while ago. Counterspelling a Nissa Who Shakes the World that's been cast using Delighted Halfling. I used a Delighted Halfling to cast a Nissa, and my opponent counterspelled it, and I don't know if there's a stop on Arena that's like, hey, your opponent used Delighted Halfling, it's uncounterable, but they definitely jammed a counterspell into it and threw that away as well. Elvish Farsight, just completely bricking, which we don't play that card in the cube anymore, but just a cantrip that needs to reveal a certain type of card. I would use Augur of Bolus as an example here, but you always get the 1/3 at the very least, so that's not a straight up 0 for 1. And then everyone's favorite, which everyone's experienced at some point or another, Kraken a fetch land with no fetchables left in the deck. Just rip up your land and
take one for your trouble.
Yep. So celebrating episode 041 with my favorite 0 for 1s in Magic. Oh, hey, whoa, hey, whoa. Babe, what's wrong? Babe, you're okay. Look, it's me. You were just having a bad dream or something. Oh my God, babe, it was crazy. I had this dream that this new Magic set was coming out. It was called, what was it? It was called Tarkir Dragonstorm, and it was this return to Khans of Tarkir. It was just, oh my God, it was just so cool. There were dragons everywhere, and the 3-color clans were back, and just Johnny was in the story for some reason, and there was a new core Skyfisher with Flash. It looked like a Magic the Gathering set, babe, like a real fantasy Magic set. And baby, listen, I love you, but you know it's just a dream. Magic doesn't make sets like that anymore. Yeah, I know. It was exactly what people want Magic sets to look like, and I mean, there were like monasteries on airships and this new omen mechanic, and babe, it was so cool. I know, dear, I know, but you've got to get some rest now. You've got your big Power Rangers Universes Beyond pre-release tomorrow, and you've got to get some sleep. I know, babe, I know.